Hi everyone, I am back with another video. This one is a request that was made from South Africa. Hi Gordon. And it is a tactical tutorial. It is a video about how I would play a specific mission. So let's go and see. The mission is Timely Objectives. So Timely Objectives is not in the standard rulebook. It is from the Jugger pack or is it from Bolt Action Alliance pack? One of those two, can't remember. But I will talk you through what the mission is and one caveat: I am using the mission as it is written right now in the Warlord Games Bolt Action Tournament pack, which is from the last WTC. We might see some changes to this for the next WTC, but right now that is what I am talking from. So, and you can see my copy of it is pretty handled. I've been looking at it quite a lot. So let's talk about it. So the parameters for this mission is there are 3 objectives. They are all placed on the center line, and you take turns placing one objective. They have to be 12 inches apart, which is not a huge problem for me. I think that placement will mean most of the time that you have 3 objectives just spaced out more or less in the center of the board. Sometimes some players might want to place them at the edge just for that cheeky outflank, but most of the time they'll be placed just evenly distributed along the center line. You have a 12-inch deployment zone, as per usual, which is usually written as you deploy up to 12 inches from the center line, right? But since most boards are 48 inches, that would mean 12-inch deployment zones. You can have reserves, you can have outflanking, you can have forward deployment, and you can have hidden setup. Now, for me, I don't see that much reason to have reserves in this scenario, simply because there's no reason not to be on the board and fail those order dice. So most of the time I will not reserve anything unless I have very specific units that I want to be pushing at a very specific enemy unit. Like if I have a bazooka, for instance, in a jeep, and I want that bazooka to go and kill his tiger, then I wait until the tiger's on the board, obviously. But most of the time I'll not. Outflanking, you will see people outflank in this scenario just to get onto the objectives that are closest to the edges. But I think the most useful one of these is the forward deployment, especially if combined with hidden, because you can be on objectives from turn 1. So if you have a lot of forward deployers, especially maybe the Soviet scouts, that is really beneficial. What you do is you score 1 point per objective that you control at the end of the turn, and obviously there are rules for what can control the objectives. At the WTC, it's only infantry that can control objectives, which means that the last WTC, it was vehicles could contest but not control. We'll see what happens next time. So for me, there are several ways to play this. One tactic that I often use is the early rush. With the early rush, you want the objectives to be in cover so that you can rush up and stay in cover. Oh. Sorry about that. You want to rush up to the objectives, stay on the objectives, and go down, which means that you want the objectives to be in cover, either line of sight blocking, hard or soft cover, some sort of cover, so that you get that cover from the enemy's retaliation. Forward deployers is really beneficial for this tactic, as is good push units, units that can survive being pushed into the center board. You can also do it with horde armies, where you have so many units that you just everything is just swamped in your army. What is most key here is that you have to be able to survive at least 3 turns on most or all of the objectives, because if you don't, then the enemy is going to collect more points than you are, and that will mean that he wins. So you're going to have to stay on the objectives quite early on and survive on the objectives. If you can stay on all objectives for 4 turns, you're guaranteed a win. Otherwise, you're going to have to play it cleverly, but that is basically the tactics. You rush up, turn 1, stay on all 3 objectives, or at least on 2 of them, and that's how you win. Just survive from there on. You don't even have to kill the enemy, just stay on the objectives and go down and be on ambush, basically. Then you can also try the opposite tactic, which is the late rush. The late rush, that is where you have your objectives, you want them to be near the lanes of approach, but not in the open. And what you do is you turn 3, because you have to push up turn 3, otherwise you're going to lose the game. Turn 3, you push up. You spend the first half of the game just shooting at the enemy, setting up for the rush in turn 3. You shoot the enemy, you damage him somewhat, and then you push up into the objectives on turn 3, hoping to sit there for the rest of the game, because now the enemy is so damaged that he can't actually win anymore. The units that are good for this are skirmish units that can spend the first few turns delivering pain to the enemy, and then good push units that you can push up there in turn 3. And they need to be able to survive, so you need to be more Daka heavy than the enemy is, because you need to be able to damage him without being damaged in return. So if you're playing against, I don't know, Japanese hordes, bamboo spears, right? Then this is a good tactic. Just shoot him, and continue delivering pain until turn 3, you rush. Yeah, that is the late rush. Then you can do clearing. Clearing is not very effective. What you want to happen is you want the objectives to be in the open, where you can see them. And then you want to have HE, MMT platforms, vehicles that can rush up and contest. That is what's beneficial for this type of tactic. And what you basically do is you sit in your own deployment zone. You have a lot of artillery or Daka stewards, what have you. You sit in your own deployment zone and you just shoot everything that moves up to those objectives. You go on ambush. Everything that moves up gets killed. This is difficult because you're going to have to push at some point, and if your army doesn't really have any good units to push up, then you're going to have to push up very late game, and you're going to have to be able to shoot everything off the objectives all the time, which is not very easy. So I've seen a lot of players try to do this, and I've also seen a lot of players fail. It's not an easy tactic to employ. The final one that I want to talk about is the contest. Here you want the objectives to be near line of sight blockers, so that your contesters can easily move back and forth between the line of sight blocked and the objective. And what's really good at doing this is cavalry, or motorcycles, armored cars, but anything really which has recce is something that you can use for this. However, when you're doing this, what you're really playing for is for the opponent to make a mistake, or you're playing for the draw. So this is not a way to win most of the time, unless your opponent really messes up. So that was the ways that I see you can play timely objectives, the tactics that you can employ, and of course each tactic works best with a specific army build type, with specific units, and against a specific army build type. So you're going to have to always evaluate what is my enemy, what is my army, and what's the table like, and then figure out which of these tactics that you want to use. If anyone else has any bright ideas, please write them in the comments. That was it for me. Cheers.